Hey Goblin, you've been really practicing those war drums.
I'll bring the generic Goblin noise!
Hey gang! Using the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, will get you 10% off any order over $10 at Flipside Gaming. It'll also get you 10% off any orders of singles at Multizone. And it'll get you 10% off most products at Original Magic Art, with the exceptions of some paintings. If these fine sites don't have what you're looking for, you can also consider using my affiliate link when ordering from TCG Player. And if you'd like to join the Generic Goblin Gang to support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below. You'll also be excited to hear that Flipside Gaming is doing a giveaway for Double Masters. If you place an order of $10 or more between July 6th and August 7th, you'll be entered for your chance to win the box. Alternatively, you can send a stamped, self-addressed envelope or postcard to Flipside Gaming to be entered to win as well. It's one entry per person, so good luck and have fun. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game features the Gamebreaker gang, with Martin playing Silas and Reyhan partners. He keeps Marin, Swamp, Coalition Relic, Survival of the Fittest, Empowered Autogenerator, Bayou, and Birds of Paradise. I am playing the Duke of Dumpsters Daretti, keeping Phyrexia's Core, Mountain, Darksteel Citadel, Grim Monolith, Staff of Nin, Planar Bridge, and a Grindstone. Nick is playing Rienne, keeping a Birds of Paradise, 2 Plains, a Forest, Sungrass Prairie, Misty Rainforest, and Congregation at Dawn. Last but not least, Max is playing Karametra, keeping a Nissa Who Shakes the World, a Forest, a Plains, Karn's Bastion, Doubling Season, Austere Command, and Winds of Abandon. I win the die roll and start us off. I play a Mountain, passing. Nick plays a Forest and casts Birds of Paradise. Martin plays a Bayou and plays his own birds.
Cross and Verge. Go ahead. Bird fight.
Max plays a tap Crows and Verge. I play a Darksteel Citadel and cast Grim Monolith. Nick plays a Plains and casts a Draconic Disciple. Martin plays a Swamp and puts out Coalition Relic. Max just plays a Plains. I play a Mountain and I cast Daretti. I uptick him, discarding 2 and drawing 2, and play a Mind Stone before passing. Nick plays a Sungrass Prairie and hits Daretti with his Disciple before passing to Martin. Martin taps some mana for an Empowered Autogenerator, which comes in tapped, and he plays a tapped Temple of Malady, scrying 1 and passing. Max plays a Forest, and he passes, while Nick casts Congregation at Dawn as we move to my turn. I play a Phyrexia's Core and tap out for Gilded Lotus. I then downtick Daretti, swapping the Grim Monolith on the field for a Staff of Nin in my yard, and Nick reveals the cards he finds.
Turns out people do.
The Royal Elder, not by Mystic, Ravager War.
Nick draws for turn and plays a Plains. He casts Fabro Elder and hits Daretti again with a Disciple. This unfortunately takes out my commander, and Nick then passes. Martin casts Marin in his main phase, and then plays out one of his commanders, Reyhan. He drops an island and passes. Max plays a Karn's Bastion as his land for turn, and has enough mana to cast Karametra. At the end of turn, I ping Martin for 1 with my staff. I draw from my staff, and for turn, playing a Sequestered Stash and recasting Daretti. I uptick him once more, discarding 2 and drawing 2, and then cast the newly drawn Crucible of Worlds, passing to Nick. Nick plays a Misty Rainforest, and Martin puts a charge counter on his relic. Nick then brings in Rienne, and goes at Daretti, but this time with the Vigilante Fabro Elder. It connects for 4, and drops Daretti to 1 loyalty. He then taps the Elder in a second main phase for 3 mana, paying 1 extra for an Anger, and at the end of turn, Nick's aggression costs him his Birds of Paradise as I ping it with my staff. Martin taps his Autogenerator, adding another counter to it, and making 2 black. He then casts a Commander's Sphere, and brings in his other half of Commanders, Silas. Marin then takes out Daretti, while Reyhan connects with Max for 3. Max casts his Farhaven Elf in his main phase, getting the land from casting the creature, and then finding one as it enters. I play a land from my graveyard, thanks to the Crucible of Worlds, and recast Daretti. I then uptick him, discarding 2 and drawing 2 before passing Nick. Nick cracks his Misty Rainforest, losing 1 life to go and find a land, and puts to field a Cinder Glade, which comes in untapped because he has enough basics. He then plays out Perilous Foray, and moves to combat. Rienne goes at Daretti, while the Feybarrow goes at Max. Both Max and my Planeswalker take the hit, and Nick then sacrifices the Anger to his Foray, going to find a land with the basic land type. He puts out a Tap Sacred Foundry, and passes. At the end of turn, Martin puts a counter onto his relic. Martin makes a blue mana, and adds another counter to his auto-generator as he makes more mana. He's able to play out Muldrotha, which seems like a lot of graveyard recursion for someone without a graveyard, and he sacrifices the sphere to draw a card, and then goes to combat. He swings Reyhan at Max, who blocks with his elf, and Silas at Nick, and Marin at me. Nick and I take the hits, and in his second main phase, Martin is able to cast the sphere again, either from Muldrotha or Silas, you get to pick. Max?
So, everyone's got a pretty big board, everyone's said some things that they can't take back, I'm just gonna... I'll steer command.
Destroy?
He picks big creatures and artifacts, effectively nuking most of the board. Nick responds to this, sacrificing his creatures to the Foray to find some lands, and gets a delayed trigger for each multicolored creature dying from Rienne. They'll return to his hand at the end of turn, and he sets them aside for the time being, and goes to find the lands, while Max passes. I play Tectonic Reformation, and then an Arcbound Ravager. I then pass to Nick. Nick recasts his Feybarrow, and then a Notvine Mystic. They have haste because of the Anger in his yard, and Nick is able to tap them for mana to recast his commander, passing. Martin pays 4 for Tempt with Discovery, and Max agrees, and Martin gets to find 2 lands. Max then finds a Wasteland, while Martin puts out a Command Tower and Phyrexian Tower. Martin then floats a mana with his bird, and sacrifices the bird to the tower for 2 black mana, and taps 1 more land to pay for an Oracle of Moldiah. He reveals his top card, and then hits Max with Reyhan before passing. At the end of turn, Max basic land cycles his Sylvan Reclamation. Max plays a Plains and drops Zendikar Resurgent. He then casts Rude Awakening and untaps his lands. 10 mana then gets him Doubling Season, followed by Nissa who shakes the world. She comes in with 10 loyalty counters, which is disgusting, and Max downticks her to get all of his forest cards from his library. There are quite a few in this 2-color deck, as you can see. Max then casts an Oracle of Moldiah, and finds a Plains with Karametra's trigger, and then draws with a Resurgent. He reveals Elspeth off the top, and he then drops in a Ajani Steadfast. He downtakes that walker to get another emblem, and moving to combat, he swings Karametra at Martin. I draw for turn, and cast Alhamrad's Archive. I then play a Mountain, and pass to Nick. Before leaving my second main phase, Nick sacrifices his Elder to find a land, and gets to put it to hand at the end of my turn. Nick draws, and I cycle Arch of Araska with a Tectonic Reformation ability, drawing 2 cards. Nick then recasts his Elder, and then casts a Ravager Worm. It comes in, and fights Max's Oracle of Moldiah. Moving to combat, Rienne goes at Ajani, and 2 others go at Nissa. Even though they only take 1 damage per creature, they still get taken out, and Nick then casts his Draconic Disciple again, passing. Martin draws and plays Opulent Palace off the top of his library. He casts Toothy in his main phase, and finds Pier putting it to hand and shuffling his library. He reveals a Misty off the top, which he plays. Reyhan then goes at Max again for another 3, but 2 of it is prevented, with Max only taking 1 because of the Ajani emblem. Max untaps his massive pile of forests and has just a ton of mana. He casts Elspeth, Knight Errant, who comes in with 8 loyalty counters. Before activating her though, Max then activates Karn's Bastion to populate, adding more loyalty counters to her. He then down-ticks her to get her emblem, making most of his stuff indestructible. Max is then able to easily cast an overloaded Winds of Abandon, exiling all creatures Max doesn't control. Nick then responds, sacrificing his creatures to the foray, and getting to go find some lands, and gets a delayed trigger to return them to his hand thanks to Rienne. I also sacrifice my Arcbound Ravager to itself, and Martin sacrifices Reyhan to the tower and puts it to the command zone, moving the 3+1/+1 counters onto Toothy. The exile then occurs, and Martin gets to find some lands, and then draw 4 from Toothy's leave trigger. Max then hits Nick with Karametra and passes. I draw for turn and play an Ancient Tomb as my land drop before casting Grindstone. I then lose 2 life, tapping the tomb to help cast Wheel of Fortune to hopefully dig myself into Painter's Servant so I can combo Max out since combat isn't really an option at this point. I get to draw 14 cards, with the archive being out, but sadly none of them are the Servant. I then cycle a mountain, drawing 2 more, and then cast Thrill of Possibilities, discarding a card and drawing 4 more cards. Sadly, none of those cards are the Servant either. With nothing else, I have to discard down to 7 and pass to Nick. Nick plays a tap Croson Verge and then a National's Altar. Sigarda then hits the field, followed by Kadama's Reach, and Nick then passes. Martin draws, casting Solemn Simulacrum. It enters and finds him a tap basic. He then casts Progenitor Mimic, which comes in as another copy of Solemn, and finds him another basic. Martin then plays a tapped Watery Grave, passing. Max plays out Kamala in his main phase, drawing from the Resurgent trigger. He knows he can't find any more lands, and skips Karametra's trigger. He then casts Sylvan Advocate, drawing another card. Using Kamal's ability, he animates 5 lands, and then pumps the board twice with Kamal again. His lands get an extra +2/+2 from the Advocate, making them 9/9s. He swings 4 lands at me, and Karametra and a land at Nick. I activate the Grindstone in hopes of hitting Max a little bit before getting taken out, and sadly his top 2 don't share a color. Nick then casts Path to Exile on the Wasteland headed at me, and blocks Karametra with Sigarda. Before damage, he gives the Angel indestructible by casting Boros Charm. Nick then drops to 12, while I take a total of 27. I draw for turn, and cycle Fabled Passage, drawing 2 more and still digging for that Servant. I then lose 2 more life and cast Duplicant, and it enters, and I exile Kamal. I then pass, discarding down to 7. Nick draws and goes through his graveyard. He drops a Gruul Rage Beast, which comes in, and fights Martin's Progenitor Mimic Solemn Simulacrum. Martin isn't super happy about this, but Nick justifies it by saying that he could draw a card and hopefully find a rift. Nick then plays an Evolutionary Leap, and sacrifices the Rage Beast to its activated ability. He only has to reveal 1 card deep, putting to hand a Wilderness Elemental. Nick then plays it, and goes at me with it. I cycle a land to draw 2, and block with Duplicant, but sadly, I still die. Nick then sacrifices it in his post-combat main phase to the Leap, and reveals until he hits an Archon of Valor's Reach before passing to Martin. Martin draws, but it's no rift. He plays a land and casts a Mirrorworks. Martin then plays his copy of Arcbound Ravager and sacrifices the Solemn to it to draw a card. Martin then plays out Tezzeret, Master of Metal, upticking the Walker and revealing until he hits an artifact. This has him putting to hand a copy of Crystalline Crawler, and Martin then passes. Max draws, playing out Soul of Theros. He draws from the Resurgent trigger, and then casts a Gideon Blackblade. Gideon comes in with 8 counters, which lets Max downtick him to 2 as he attempts to exile the Ravager. Martin sacrifices the Ravager to its own ability, and Max activates the Soul twice. He then casts Rishkar's Expertise, drawing 13 because of how big Karametra is. He's then able to cast his Seasons Past, returning Rude Awakening, which he'll cast Entwined. Martin and Nick agree at that point that it's game, and scoop it up to Max. Game review time. My goodness, was Max's turn where he resolved that Zendikar Resurgent strong. The Rude Awakening probably was what broke the camel's back, and following up with something like Doubling Season and then Planeswalkers and using their ultimates will typically win you the game, as it did in this case. We unfortunately didn't get to see very much of Martin's modular deck. It's really cool when it goes off, but he seemed to be lacking any of the key pieces in this game to showcase it well. I think unfortunately we only got to see the tip of the iceberg for Nick's deck. Rienne is certainly an interesting commander in Naya, and I really can't find a comparison to any of the other generals in that color pairing. I could see it getting very out of hand with something like Greater Good, and it was really cool to see. I do think that my Wheel of Fortune was very risky, but the payoff would have been great since it meant I would have been able to deal with Max. I felt like going 14 cards deep, plus probably being able to cycle more lands for 2 cards apiece, would have at least gotten me closer to it, but it turns out it was second from the bottom, so there was no hope for me. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.